When Building Operating Management magazine was launched in 1954, the post-World War II baby boom and rise of the suburbs meant that new schools and hospitals were needed throughout the country. The expanding interstate highway system also fueled demand for new hotels, and a rebounding economic market had commercial companies searching for new, larger, and taller facilities. This demand for new construction also put pressure on older facilities to renovate in order to remain competitive. Upgrades meant focusing on comforts the American public was familiar with at home. Topping facility managers' purchasing lists during the 1950s and 60s was air conditioning, which became easier to install thanks to reduced costs and more compact products. Modernizing facilities during these years also meant installing glass entrances, automatic elevators, and plastic everything, from restroom partitions to furniture. In the 1960s, more women were entering the workforce, and it quickly became apparent that older facilities had notable design flaws in need of upgrades. For starters, more women's restrooms had to be added. Floor maintenance also quickly became a challenge, as the existing hard floors were not designed to withstand the heavy amount of high heel shoe traffic. Thankfully for facility managers, new synthetic fibers for carpeting made soft flooring an affordable solution. Once found only in hotel lobbies or expensive dining rooms, carpet was now being installed everywhere: supermarkets, restrooms, elevator cabs, and even around pools. Up until the 1970s, facility managers predominantly were behind the scenes, influencing these design choices to attract tenants and keeping buildings looking pristine. However, the decade's energy crisis thrust facility managers into the spotlight. By this time, commercial buildings consumed an estimated 3% of the nation's energy because they were not designed with efficiency in mind. Half the energy utilized for heating and cooling was lost through poor quality building materials. In addition, office spaces, corridors, and even restrooms were encouraged to be brightly lit without a care for energy usage, likely because of its low cost. But when the oil embargo doubled fuel prices, building owners and managers faced pressure to conserve energy, which helped justify the investment of computerized control systems and building automation to program the most effective use of HVAC, lights, and elevators. While the industry was able to make changes to reduce energy usage, there was an unfortunate side effect that didn't become apparent until the following decades. Facility managers would soon find themselves addressing indoor air quality. Energy conservation efforts meant buildings were better insulated with less circulating fresh air, tighter fitting windows, and better sealing doors. As a result, contaminants such as chemical VOCs, bacteria, and dust stayed inside, leading to poor IAQ and sick building syndrome. Workers with prolonged exposure would feel fatigued, suffer headaches and nausea, leading to lower productivity and higher absenteeism. In addition to IAQ problems, buildings in the 1980s also faced rising concerns over the presence of asbestos. The EPA estimated that friable asbestos was in 20% of public and commercial buildings and could cause health issues if it became airborne during renovation projects. Regulations regarding both IAQ and asbestos would be debated on Capitol Hill for years, but never come to fruition, leaving building owners and facility managers on their own to address ventilation concerns. Although standards for occupant health were unavailable, a different and new law focused on occupant accessibility would greatly impact facility managers in the 1990s. The American Disabilities Act required any alterations to a space after January 26, 1992 to be accessible and usable by individuals with disabilities, which was roughly 43 million Americans at the time. Facility managers focused on installing ramps, widening doors, repositioning restroom dispensers, adding braille to signage, and much more. The 90s was also when the Green Movement finally started to take hold, despite the introduction of such initiatives dating back to the 1970s. To protect ozone depletion, CFCs were banned in 1994, and facility managers raced to phase out the refrigerant in more than 80,000 chillers across the U.S. Meanwhile, new programs popped up to guide facility managers in their environmental efforts. The EPA Green Lights Initiative was the first voluntary climate program and saved companies $23 billion in electricity costs in less than 5 years. The Energy Star Buildings program quickly followed, and in 1993, the U.S. Green Building Council was formed and by decade's end launched its LEED rating system to give facility managers a true definition of what it meant to run a green building. Thanks to LEED, the green movement would continue to flourish well into the 2000s as concerns over climate change grew. In the new millennium, the concept of green would eventually broaden holistically to sustainability and later ESG. Facility managers' efforts for energy efficiency took on new importance as the world set goals to achieve net zero energy usage by 2050. In addition to protecting the environment, more emphasis was placed on occupant health. Programs like Well and Fitwell helped guide facility managers on the best ways to improve worker and occupant health and productivity through lighting, temperature, IAQ, and more. Occupant health was never more important than during and since the recent COVID-19 pandemic. Facility managers won't soon forget the shutdown of facilities all across the country and the social distancing and hybrid work schedules that followed. And even though the pandemic is behind us, infection prevention remains a priority for facility managers in schools, hospitals, and offices all across the country. While occupant health is more of a recent priority, occupant safety has been a concern for decades. Security measures used to mean preventing break-ins and thefts. However, the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, followed 2 years later by the Oklahoma City bombing, made international and domestic terrorism high-profile threats for facility managers. Buildings were now seen as potential targets, and sadly, this proved true again with the horrific terrorist attacks of 9/11. Events like these had building owners reevaluating facilities' structural integrity. Turnstiles, access control, and metal detectors became common additions. Terrorism wasn't the only threat to occupant safety in recent years. Ever since the Columbine shooting in 1999, there have been almost 400 school shootings in the United States. These events forced facility managers to create prevention and action plans for such scenarios. A history of the facility management industry would not be complete without addressing the impact advancements in technology has had on managers. Obviously, every decade brings product innovations, access control card readers, T8 lamps and LEDs, and VRF HVAC systems, to name just a few. But in addition to products, technology overall has been disrupting the role of facility managers for decades. The first computerized maintenance program debuted in 1967. Building automation systems took root in the 1970s. Personalized computer use changed office needs in the 80s, and the introduction of the internet in the 1990s ushered in a new age for information, automation, and communication. In the 2000s, building automation of HVAC, life safety, security, lighting, and other systems would gain traction, led by BACnet, LANMARC, and Modbus protocols. The Internet of Things was the next move forward, helping to accelerate the integration of systems and provide real-time feedback about building conditions, enabling facility managers to prevent problems and provide greater building efficiency and comfort. Although IoT is still in its infancy in the facility market, it is already providing managers with an overwhelming amount of data. Advances in artificial intelligence now disrupting the industry will help accelerate the adoption and maximize the benefits of IoT technology. Building operating management and the facility managers have certainly experienced a lot of industry changes these past 70 years. Whatever is in store over the next decades, the publication will be there to cover it all.